Right now, someone investing $500 a month is on a completely different path than you. Not because they're smarter, but because they understand something most people never learn. Money moves through 4 distinct levels, and each one feels nothing like the last. Today we're breaking down all 4, in order, so you know exactly where you stand, and exactly what's coming next. In the first months of investing, the account balance barely seems to move, no matter how consistent the deposits are. A warehouse worker checking a phone app after a double shift sees the same $4 or $5 in interest, week after week, and starts to wonder if any of this is actually working. A tree doesn't look different from one week to the next either, yet somewhere underground the roots are spreading wider than the trunk above ever suggests. Growth in the beginning isn't absent, it's just too small for the eye or the bank app to register clearly. This is the exact stage where math needs patience before it needs money. Nothing about early investing rewards impatience, and that's precisely why most people give up long before the real momentum even begins to show, right when it was finally about to kick in. A recently graduated nurse setting aside $300 a month and a delivery driver setting aside $1,000 a month are running the exact same race, just at different speeds. Assuming a reasonable 7% annual return, $300 a month reaches $50,000 in a little over 11 years. Bump that to $500 a month, and the same milestone arrives in roughly 7 years. Push it to $1,000 a month, and $50,000 can show up in under 4 years. The gap between these timelines has nothing to do with luck. 2 people earning the same salary can retire a decade apart, purely based on which one started writing that first check earlier. The date on the first deposit ends up mattering more than the size of it, a truth almost nobody hears before their 20s are already gone. Most people who quit investing don't quit during a crash. They quit during a quiet, uneventful stretch where nothing seems to be happening at all, usually somewhere in the first 2 or 3 years. A retail manager checking a retirement account after 18 months of steady contributions sees a number barely bigger than what was put in and decides the whole thing isn't worth the effort. Here's the part that rarely gets said out loud. Working more hours isn't the fix for this feeling, and staring at the balance more often won't make it grow faster either. The only real fix is refusing to close the account during the exact window where it looks like nothing is happening. Every person who eventually reaches the later levels passed through this same discouraging stretch first. The ones who made it simply didn't stop moving. Somewhere around $50,000, something shifts. The interest generated each month stops being an abstract number on a statement and starts covering something specific: an electric bill, a car payment, a nice dinner out on a Friday night without touching a single dollar of the original balance. A school teacher glancing at an account on a Sunday morning notices the monthly interest alone covered the entire grocery bill for the week. That's the moment money stops being just a number and starts feeling like a second, smaller paycheck arriving without any extra work attached to it. This is the first checkpoint where investing stops being a leap of faith and starts being tangible proof. But peace of mind at this stage comes with its own risk, one that shows up the moment progress finally starts to feel real. $50,000 sitting in a high-yield savings account earning around 4% a year generates close to $167 a month. The same $50,000 in a broad index fund, averaging closer to 7% over time, generates roughly $290 a month, though with more ups and downs along the way. Double that balance to $100,000, and a certificate of deposit paying 4.2% produces about $350 a month, steady and predictable. An index fund at the same balance can average closer to $580 a month over the long run. The account someone chooses isn't a small detail. It's the difference between a slow trickle and a real second income. And the choice made at this exact balance often determines how long someone stays stuck at the next stage. The moment money starts feeling comfortable is often the exact moment progress quietly stalls. A mid-level office worker who finally sees a cushion in the account starts upgrading small things: a nicer apartment, a newer car, weekend trips that didn't happen before. None of it feels reckless in the moment. 2 co-workers earning identical salaries can walk completely different paths from here. One keeps contributions steady and treats the growing balance as fuel. The other lets the same balance quietly justify new spending, and 5 years later, one account has doubled while the other has barely moved. This isn't a story about discipline versus indulgence. It's simpler than that. It's about whether the extra breathing room gets reinvested or absorbed. That single decision, repeated month after month, quietly decides who reaches the next level and who spends years circling this one. There's a specific point where the math flips entirely. Up until now, every dollar of growth came primarily from what someone deposited by hand. Past a certain balance, the interest generated in a single month can actually exceed the paycheck contribution that used to feel like the main driver. A small business owner contributing $800 a month might look at a statement one year and realize the account grew by $900 from interest alone, more than the deposit itself. That's not a lucky month. That's the mechanism finally outperforming the manual effort behind it. From this point forward, the account isn't just following instructions anymore, it's carrying its own weight. Reaching this exact threshold is what separates people who feel like they're pushing a boulder from people who feel like the boulder is finally rolling on its own. Starting at $100,000 and contributing $500 a month at a 7% average return, reaching $500,000 takes close to 17 years. Raise that contribution to $1,000 a month, and the same milestone arrives in roughly 14 years. Push contributions to $2,000 a month, and $500,000 can appear in under 11 years, nearly 6 years faster than the slowest path, purely from adjusting one monthly number. A postal worker and a small agency marketing consultant, both starting at the exact same $100,000, can arrive at financial independence nearly 6 years apart, based entirely on this single variable. Nothing about luck or market timing explains that gap. The size of the monthly contribution during this stretch matters more than almost any other decision made along the entire journey, and what happens with the extra growth from here decides even more. Once a balance crosses into six figures, two forces start working against it in the background. Inflation slowly shrinking what the money can actually buy, and taxes taking a bite out of every gain along the way. A software engineer with a healthy brokerage account might feel wealthy on paper while actually losing ground in real terms if neither factor gets addressed. Wealthy households rarely outsmart the market. They simply structure things smarter. Tax-advantaged accounts, strategic asset location, and long-term holding periods aren't loopholes. They're basic maintenance, the financial equivalent of changing the oil before the engine seizes up. Nobody at this stage needs a team of lawyers or a private banker. A few deliberate choices made early enough are usually enough to protect a decade of hard-earned progress from being quietly eaten away by forces most people never think to check for. At a certain point, the math stops resembling anything close to a regular paycheck. A dentist who spent 15 years contributing steadily might look at an account and realize this year's growth alone was larger than an entire year's salary, without a single extra hour worked. Picture two rivers merging. One is the contribution someone still adds each month, and the other is the growth the money now generates on its own. Early on, the first river is larger. Eventually, the second river becomes the one doing most of the work, and there's no going back to how things looked before. This is the phase where money stops functioning like a tool and starts functioning like a second employee, working every hour of every day without ever needing a break, a raise, or a reason to keep showing up. $500,000 invested at a conservative 5% annual return generates a little over $2,000 a month without touching the principal at all. $1 million at that same rate produces around $4,167 a month, enough to replace a full-time salary for most American households. $2 million at 5% generates roughly $8,333 a month, and that's using a cautious, conservative estimate rather than an optimistic one. An accountant and a retired teacher, sitting on identical $2 million portfolios, are each generating a monthly income. Most people spend an entire career trying to reach through a paycheck alone. The number on the account isn't just savings anymore at this point. It's a functioning, self-sustaining income source that keeps paying out whether anyone shows up to work or not. At this stage, the goal shifts from building wealth to protecting and organizing it properly. Trusts, for example, aren't a mysterious tool reserved for the ultra-rich. They're simply a legal structure that controls exactly how assets get managed and passed on, without unnecessary complications along the way. A small business owner with a paid-off rental property and a sizable investment account might set up a basic trust not to hide money, but to make sure none of it gets tangled up in confusion later on. Diversifying passive income across real estate, dividends, and interest-bearing accounts also reduces the risk of relying on just one source. None of this requires a team of lawyers or a private island. It requires the same quality that got someone here in the first place: consistency, applied one more time to protect what took years of patience to finally build. Nobody standing at level 4 started there. Every single person generating thousands of dollars a month in passive income once stared at a small, unimpressive balance and wondered if it was ever going to amount to anything at all. The same doubt that shows up for almost everyone somewhere around month 3 or 4. The distance between level 1 and level 4 was never about talent, connections, or some secret only a few people know. It was time, applied consistently, without quitting during the boring middle stretch where nothing on the screen seems to be moving. Two people can start with the exact same amount of money and end up in completely different places, simply based on who kept going after the excitement wore off and the routine set in. As Warren Buffett once said, "No one wants to get rich slow." And yet slow is exactly how it happens, one unremarkable month quietly stacked on top of another. So take an honest look at the 4 levels from today's video and think about where the numbers actually place you right now. Not where you wish you were, but where you really are. Drop your level in the comments, along with what you're currently investing each month. Someone reading your comment might be standing right at the edge of quitting, and your number could be the exact reason they decide to keep going. And if you want the next part of this series, follow the channel so you don't miss it.